Yeah, so there's a documentary on Netflix. I thought it was Peacock, but it's on Netflix, and it's called The Perfect Wife, and it's about Sheri Papini, who is a woman that disappeared in Redding, California in 2016, I think it is. And so it's a trip because a while back I talked about a documentary where a woman went missing. Um, and the cops did not believe her husband. And so it was this whole thing. And then she showed up. They thought she was doing the whole Gone Girl thing. Turns out it was an epic fail by the police department. And the only reason they ever figured it out is because somebody in a different police department saw a crime, and was able to kind of match up some of the details to this other crime that they were chasing down. And they ultimately found the people that attacked this woman that did all this stuff. Like, it was a really tragic story. And I'll have to look it up, throw the name on the screen because I can't remember which one that was. Um, but anyways, this Sheri Papini is the same idea. This dude comes home, his wife is not home. He doesn't know where she is. He turns on his phone, or picks up his phone, turns on Find My Phone, finds her phone on the side of the road with her headphones and some hair, and she's completely gone. And it starts this 22-day, I think, search for this woman who ultimately shows back up. She shows back up at the side of the road with like chains on. She's all beat up, all this stuff. And so this is a three-part documentary on Netflix. And like I was joking before, I've somehow turned into a total true crime girl. Like, whenever these things pop up, I'm like, ooh, I better watch that. It's like if I saw Dateline on TV, I'd probably never leave my television.
You guys are watching murder porn?
Murder porn? Stan, this is just an investigative crime show.
Adults like documentaries.
Yes, Stan, these are based on real things. This is like news. It's informative. Parents like informative stuff.
Okay.
This story is interesting, and I'm not going to feel bad about spoiling it because it's a true story. If you want the true story, it's actually out there. Um, uh, so the first one, the one that I was talking about before, that actually started, that was about the woman that disappeared, and they thought it was a Gone Girl thing, but it wasn't. That one was done in three parts. Also, I think it was also Netflix. Maybe it was Hulu. Um, and oh shit. Maybe this one's on Hulu. Crap. I will put that at the bottom of the screen. I can't remember if this was on Hulu or Netflix now. But anyways, the other one, the girl that went missing, was three parts, and it was a really well done documentary. And then there was the one that you were talking about, the Jennifer, was what Jennifer did. I think that's what that one was called. And
That's
that
one we
one,
spoke about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that was the one up in Canada. That one was a trip.
Hmm.
Um, and that one was really well made too. That might have been in three parts also. So this one was in three parts, and the only problem I had with this one really is that it was kind of overproduced. There's a lot of like too much, not special effects, but like they would show like flashing images and kind of sounds and music over the top, and it was really kind of corny at parts. So like when they were doing the actual documentary part of it, when they were showing the interviews and talking to people and doing all that, it was really good. But in some parts, some of the production of it was a little too much. But otherwise, it was really interesting because this is the story again of a woman that went, she disappeared, and her husband goes in, he calls the police, goes to the police station. He's very forthcoming. When you watch the videos with him, he's almost too like calm and natural with the police for what's going on. Like, his conversations with them feel so casual, that like if I was a cop, he would have been suspect number one instantly, which he would anyways because he's the husband. But like there was this
Sure.
weird casualness to his conversation.
Let me, since you're at the top, let me ask you, what do you guys think? Are you even allowed to tell me?
As
Like,
of
what do you
right,
think
as of right now,
Yeah, I think someone grabbed her. I mean, is that?
yes, I do.
Okay,
I'm not
do
gonna lie to you.
I think two people actually, because she's a fighter.
And so this is all going down, but they give him a lie detector test. He never asks for a lawyer. He says yes to everything the police department does. And as far as they can prove, he had nothing to do with her disappearance. he's out there every day on camera saying, you know, I hope you come home, because they haven't found a body, nothing. They are organizing search parties, doing all kinds of stuff. So, you know, over time, over the 22 days, you know, they investigate her phone, they investigate some stuff. They find out at one point that maybe she was texting somebody else, like another guy. And like they're starting to feel like, you know, maybe she wasn't taken, maybe she ran away, maybe something happened. So at the end of this 22 days, it was Thanksgiving of, again, I think it's 2016. Um, she somebody calls the police from the side of the road, relatively far away from their town. I don't remember where it was. And the guy calls, he's like, hey, there's this woman here. She's got chains on her. She says she was kidnapped, all this stuff. So the police show up, they take her to the hospital. She is very distraught. She says the only thing she wants is to talk to her husband. So her husband shows up, you know, and I think it's the last thing they say at the end of the first episode.
The way she looked at me in that moment, I felt like she was lying.
And like they show pictures, I mean, she is beat up, she is bruised, she was battered. She had marks around her ankles, all this stuff. Like she was really beat up. And so he, you know, the one thing that you start to figure out as you're watching the documentary, especially when you get deep into the second episode, is they have no like post crime interviews with the wife. So like as you start to put things together, you can kind of tell that either they're waiting for a big reveal with her at the end where she was the victim, because they kind of did that with the first one where they didn't talk to the wife right away. So you are kind of left guessing whether she was involved or not. In this one, the wife isn't involved with this documentary, so you start to kind of put together that maybe she's full of it, and it turns out that she totally pulled a Gone Girl. Like she so there's a guy that she knew was totally into her, and so she started talking to him, had him pick her up. She staged the kidnapping. She went to his house in Southern California, which is actually, it's like 8 or 9 hours from Redding, like wherever they were. It was pretty far down south, like it was a long drive. And so she stayed in his house for 3 weeks, basically. Like he liked her. Like he was kind of hoping they would have something afterwards. And so when they finally get him and they're interviewing him, he talks about how, you know, he did beat her up or help her bruise herself, but he didn't, like, he wasn't aggressively like doing it. Like one of the things to get a good bruise, he like pushed a hockey stick against her back and just pressed on it so it would leave a mark. Like he was, in his mind, like he was trying to be nice and help her. And so, you know, it comes out in this whole thing that she staged this whole thing. Like she, at one point during their marriage, had didn't have an affair with a guy, but she ended up giving this guy her phone number, and they texted each other for like years about how they were going to try and get away and all this stuff. And up until like the day that she disappeared. So this guy was another like potential suspect. And it's just crazy. Like she did this whole thing just to do it. And then afterwards, she like she wouldn't talk about it. So while they were still investigating, while they didn't know it was her yet, you know, she didn't leave the house with her husband. She didn't talk to anybody. She didn't do anything. And she tried to make it seem like everything was good at home again, but she wouldn't leave. And when the cops finally put everything together, they have her in the room with her husband. And, you know, they basically say, hey, you know, we found this evidence. They're like, do you want to talk with us with your husband in the room, or do you want to just talk with us? They're like, because we have conflicting evidence, but we have a lot of evidence. And at first she's like, oh no, he can stay. And so he stays in there, and they basically rattle off all this stuff. And she kind of sticks to her guns. Like, even though they like rattled everything off, she's like, she's like, I can't tell you anything because she's still sticking to the story that it was two women that kidnapped her. And I guess that was a big deal too, because when she was taken and when she came back, she said it was two Mexican women that kidnapped her. And this led to a huge um, outcry against like Hispanic people. Like there was a bunch of problems after this because people were like raging about Mexicans kidnapping white women for sex trafficking and all this stuff. Like it was this whole huge thing, and it happened to lead right into I think the election that year, and it kind of fed into this whole illegal immigrant phrase, and all this stuff. And so this was a direct like feeder into that kind of mania. And she made it up. There was no two women. She was with this one guy the whole time. Uh, but when the cops were talking to her, she's like, "No, I don't want to give her up. She's the one that set me free." Blah blah blah. Still sticking to it, be this woman, and they're like, "Yeah, we've actually been to the house and talked to the guy." And at this point, like the husband's like, "I got to step out for a second," and it's just wild. And so she ultimately goes to jail for I want to say she got like 4 years, but she only stayed for 2. And now she's kind of out, but with some mental health stipulations, and nobody really hears from her. But I guess she still, from what I read, she still kind of has supervised visits with her kids because they had 2 kids too. Like she disappeared, she was just bailed on her husband and her 2 kids for this thing. Like it's absolutely wild. And it was a trip to watch because like I said, the way that it unfolds, at first you're kind of wondering because kind of remembered the name, but I couldn't remember the story, so I didn't read anything about it. I went in totally blind, and to see it unravel, you start to figure out what's going on. But like the way that it starts off, it was really bizarre the way this husband dealt with the police because he was so like okay with the police. Like he just seemed like so overly friendly. And like I said, if it was me, if I was a cop, I would definitely have thought this dude was super suspicious,
Yeah.
just because of the way that he was talking to them. And he literally had nothing to do with it. Like he was completely innocent in this thing. But it turns out too, like over time, the wife told people that like some friends that he was abusive, and he wasn't. She had a black eye one time, and she told a bunch of friends that it was that he hit her with a black eye. But then a bunch of her friends were like, "Yeah, no, we were all at our house playing Nintendo Wii together, and that we were playing tennis, and he swung too hard, and he accidentally hit me because I was standing too close to him." And it was this whole thing where this is a thing that people witness, like they know exactly how she got this black eye, and it was completely innocent, playing a game, zero aggression. But she told people he was abusive. Like the the woman has a lot of problems, and so of course for the documentary at the very end says, we've reached out to Sheri Papini and she didn't return any of our calls. So it is unfortunate, I guess, to a degree that you don't get this person's side of the story, but at the same time, it's such a crazy story. I don't know that there's a redeeming angle on it other than she has mental
Hmm.
health issues, you know.
Do they go into her past and maybe any like trauma related to that? Because I feel like some like that type of
Yeah,
behavior.
they go into her past, and as far as I remember, there was no specific trauma. She has a history of things like this, like not to that level. Like this was
Sure.
incredibly extreme, but like she lied about other people. Like, what was it? Her sister or one of her friends said, she kind of becomes a different person depending on the situation she's in. So
Right.
like she's not super level or anything like that. So she's definitely a person that has some kinds of issues, obviously, because she went through this, and did this thing, and was willing to like basically beat the hell out of herself to do it. And it it was really it was really a trip. And you know,
Yeah.
And of course, when she got kidnapped, it was a big deal because she was a pretty white woman in California, pretty white, blonde hair, blue eyed. Like
Right.
she was the person that if you see this stuff happen enough, you also see the complaints that, if a black woman or a Latino woman goes missing, they don't get as much hype. This woman got all the hype. Now, watching this documentary, the husband did a lot of work. Like he really tried to keep her in the public eye when she was missing because he believed she was alive. Turns out she
Right.
was, but he got the national media involved and all that. So it's definitely a trip, but it's a crazy, crazy um kind of documentary to watch. And especially when you get to the last one, you can see just kind of near the end of it just how affected the husband was by it,
Hmm.
and now he's kind of like, I don't want anything to do with her. Obviously, I mean, you wouldn't really.
Sure. It
um
reminds me a bit of like the Gabby Petito story with just like how the news was completely
mm-hmm.
all over it. Blonde hair, blue
Yep.
eyed, white girl. Yeah. And everyone was following that story.
Yeah, and that one was the one where that area, like Latina women were disappearing all the time and they were getting no
Right.
coverage. This
Right.
girl had this whole thing, and it was um this whole huge press coverage thing. So people were kind of pissed about that. Well, not kind of pissed, they were super pissed about that. Um,
Right.
but it was yeah, it was a trip for sure. Like, and
Hmm.
this whole documentary was really good. Like like I said, it was overproduced in parts, but just the
Right.
story behind it is interesting enough that it's worth a watch, and to see these interviews and kind of see how in this one the police still made a few mistakes, but nothing as egregious as that other one where they basically
Yeah.
told this couple and told the public that this couple pulled a gone girl and they were wrong. In this
Hmm.
case, they were fooled on the other side of the spectrum where they, they didn't outwardly make mistakes, like they didn't publicly announce any mistakes, but there were certainly things that they could have done better in the process.
Right.
But they ultimately found their person. So it was definitely interesting and worth a watch. Why don't you talk about White Lotus? Because I know Andrew and I have watched it and talked about it a little bit before, but I love getting other angles on it because the two seasons are very different. I know
They
there's at
are.
least a third season and maybe a fourth season coming.
Hmm.
I think the only through line between the two is Jennifer Coolidge between season one and season two.
Yeah. And her husband,
Oh yeah.
John Grease or
Hmm.
Grice, um, briefly, right, in
Yeah.
both. So I I really enjoyed it. I started it. This is a series that people have been recommending to me for at least a year, if not over a year. And since I subscribed to Max for this month, that was one of the first recommended series that came up on there. So I was like, all right, I guess it's my time to turn this on and try it out. I got through both seasons within 5, 6 days. Very quick watch. Teaches you a lot about, the upper class and how I don't want to say everybody because that's more of a generalization, but just how there's this, or just in general, I think a lot of misconceptions of, you have money, you're happy, you know, everything goes away with money, which, this series shows that it's certainly not the case, that there are several different dilemmas that come up when you do have money, and how some people don't learn to adapt properly with wealth and have a good head on their shoulders when it comes to making decisions. Season one, you've got that newly married couple, the guy who he sucks. I like wanted to punch him in the face. um, Character Shane, and then his fiance, who I guess they weren't even dating that long, which is kind of funny. She plays Rachel, Alexandra Daddario.
Yep.
and just the whole relationship. It's hard to believe that like not until the honeymoon do they really get to know each other. It makes you wonder, it's like, were they not living together prior to this? Did she not realize like what, I'll just say what a massive bitch he was? Just completely like everything from complaining and like with I thought Molly Shannon was hysterical coming and showing up at the honeymoon at the White Lotus
She's
during
mom, right? She's his mom.
she's his mom. Yeah, very funny. So that was pretty funny. And even the staff. I mean, I felt really bad for the spa Belinda, the spa owner or
Mhm.
spa manager. I shouldn't say spa owner, spa manager, who was so excited and really trusted Jennifer Coolidge's character Tanya when she was like, "Yeah, open a spa and live your dream and I'll fund it." I mean, it was so believable and just Jennifer Coolidge crushed it at this as this character. Like you hated her and you felt sorry for her. She's just
Mhm.
this complete, she's so aloof and manipulative too. And you feel sorry for her because clearly she has trauma she's expressed in the first season with abusive parents, and yet she decides to go to Hawaii to spread her mom's ashes, which is also confusing. It's like for a woman that you hated so much, why do you even care
And she puts
about
a lot of energy into it.
like way too much energy
Yeah.
into it for a woman who abused you your whole life? I mean, heck, I would have just like left. I don't even know if I would have gone to the funeral, let alone like gathered ashes and made the decision, oh, where should I spread her remains? Like it's
Mhm.
just interesting. So that was loved the scene though where I thought it was hysterical. Armand, the hotel manager, gets back at Shane, the jerk husband, to make a creative date idea to make him feel like, oh, we're going to appease you since we gave you the wrong suite, and puts him and his wife on that cruise with Jennifer Coolidge's character Tanya, who's sobbing and asks specifically to have her mother's ashes, I guess, spread out, or at least that was what the cruise, the evening cruise was intended to be. Very
Mhm.
funny, very funny. So I really enjoyed it. So here's a question for you, and my mom just started watching it. I told her how good it was, so she just started watching it this evening, and she asked me, and now that I'm thinking back, didn't he, as in Shane, make it seem like in the first episode, like within the first 5 minutes, that his wife's dead? So you think this entire time that he killed his wife, but really he kills somebody else, or his wife dies somehow on the trip? Because she brought that up and I completely forgot about that. But I was thinking the entire series, he's going to end up killing his wife, but he doesn't.
Yeah, there was something.
Why did he say that?
I don't remember, and I don't remember what he said, but I do like that is in the back of my mind, but I don't remember what it was. I'll have to look it up. And maybe even just rewatch that first episode.
Because he
Because
says like she's dead, and I'm thinking, oh, he killed his wife, or his wife somehow tragically died at the hotel. So that's why we're watching, and they go back in time to a week later, and that's when you figure it out.
Which hotel were you at?
White Lotus.
White Lotus. Our guide told us someone was killed there.
Bodies on our plane.
On our plane? To Honolulu?
Yeah, they're about to load the body on our plane.
Well, other than that, did you have a good vacation?
It was my honeymoon.
Yeah, congratulations.
Oh, wonderful. Was it everything you hoped?
Where's your wife?
Yeah, where's your wife?
No offense. Leave me the fuck alone.
coconut island. I'd like to be.
But then at the end, you see her at the
The airport.
airport,
Yeah.
and I mean, you realize prior to that someone else dies, and you're like, does he mean like she's dead, as in like he's just brushing it under the rug so that this couple stops asking him in the beginning at the airport about his wife because he's embarrassed by the fact that this trip, this honeymoon, you know, broke their marriage up. It's another like Kim Kardashian wedding that's
Yeah.
under like a certain number of days, which is hysterical. Chris
Yeah.
Humphries, that was funny.
Yeah, I do remember that. And yeah, it was very contradictory at the end. So I'll have to check that out because I don't remember what happened, but I do remember like thinking about that.
Yeah, because
Um,
my mom asked me that. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. That was literally like the first 5 minutes, and you think she's dead, but she's not. And she's like, I'm just waiting to see how he kills his wife. And I was like, yeah, you just continue watching because you'll be surprised, Mom. And I'm like, yeah, I forgot about that. That's a huge thing in the beginning.
yeah, yeah, and that first season, like both seasons, to be fair, have great casts, but like I'm a big Steve
Totally.
Zahn fan, so I love Steve Zahn in that.
Oh yeah.
This is for me, I think one of the earlier Sydney Sweeney performances because
Mhm.
I never got into Euphoria. I watched the first episode and it's good, but I never watched any more of it. So I
Yeah.
definitely am behind on that. So this is one of my first, like I said, Sydney Sweeney performances, but like this is where she is for me still kind of in that rut of just being the snotty teenager.
Yeah.
She plays really
Because that's what
well,
she is.
right? Um, but she's a total shit in this too. Like her with her friend, like she sucks. And then
Yeah.
the weird thing for me was like the parents were just gonna let the kid or just did let the kid stay behind on the island. He's only like 16 or 17 or something like that.
Right.
And they're just like, okay, bye. We're just gonna leave you behind on the island, and you're just gonna join a Hawaiian rowing team. I was
Well,
like,
he just ran off like before he gets onto the plane, he just ran
yeah,
off. So it's like, okay,
yeah, like
they kind of
there's
leave that I guess to your interpretation. I don't know. Like, do the parents run after him like, "Oh, where's my child?" Or
yeah, it was definitely that. Like that was a weird one for me. I was like, they probably should have tried harder. Like that's your kid,
I mean, they
but
weren't very good parents in general. I
no,
mean,
no,
we learn about their relationship. He's an insecure, Steve Zahn's character is incredibly insecure,
yeah,
and Connie Britton's character is someone who has to pretend like she has it all together because she's like C-level executive at a tech company
hmm,
and a woman. So she feels like she's, triple, quadruple the amount of pressure being a female at that level of power and prestige within her own company, industry, etc. So yeah, that was interesting. And the friend too, it just seems like the friend of Sydney Sweeney, she's, I mean, she's on that trip, but I don't know if she actually even likes her. It seems like it's just more of a friendship of convenience, or
hmm,
like she feels like, which I don't feel good about either at the end of the day, because like you shouldn't just go on a trip with someone that you don't like, the character Paula.
yeah,
It's almost like, why do you even bother being
yeah,
friends, or why would you even pretend to be friends with somebody like that?
yeah. It's an interesting season, especially because it seems like there's not a good relationship in the entire thing. Like nobody actually likes anybody, and that's kind of the difference between the first and the second season. Because at least in the second season, you have the two Italian girls who
Yeah,
are almost sisters the way they treat each other,
yeah.
um and that one feels like a healthy or not healthy, like a lot of problems, but like they
There's a
they actually care
sincere,
about each other.
yeah, there's a sincerity there. No,
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, and it really, both seasons showcase, you know, wealth and how the wealthy act and how the non-wealthy act, and also just creating this spectrum in behavior. I was watching a YouTube video after both seasons and just like analyzing it, and it shows how in the first season the wealthy triumph over the not wealthy, as in the people that work at the hotel or I guess the friend Paula. Whereas in the second season, you find out that like the wealthy are almost like things are switched around a bit. The not wealthy win, I don't want to say win in the end, but I think ultimately get to change things over with the two Italian women at the end of the day, like the one that was with, I guess, two out of the three Italian, like Mike Imperioli's character, his son. I mean, they're in the father's room, but I mean, she gets 50,000 euros at the end.
Mhm.
Totally screws those guys over. I think the words outsmarts the wealthy. So that was fascinating. And also just, Jennifer Coolidge's character and what happens with her. It's almost like it's karma for the first season and how she treated
Mhm.
the spa manager. I don't know if you felt that way. I did. I hated
Yeah.
her
Yeah, for
after
sure.
season 1 and season 2. I'm just like, I feel bad for her, but I'm also like, she's kind of, well, first of all, she's incredibly impulsive
Mhm.
of a character, and she completely just, she's a bit like a dog. She'll just like see something she likes and is like, I have to have it. Ah.
Yeah,
And
she's unable to make it in like a smart decision.
correct.
She just goes, yeah, impulsive is the perfect way to say it. She just goes with whatever crazy ass things going on. Like she ends up on that boat that she just never should have been on. Like she should not have
Nope.
been following these people around. And yeah, it's crazy. And I love that uh what happens at the end. She avoided the uh like the kind of scheduled version of that. Like the whole reason she was on the boat was to have that happen, and she managed to avoid it. And then she's the one that makes it happen, anyways. Like,
Right. I also was like, there were points where, like, after she has that conversation with Haley Lou Richardson, the character's name Portia, right? You think,
mhm.
holy crap, wouldn't you, like, you're not that far from land. Jump the hell off that boat and start swimming. I mean, are you that, like, bad of a swimmer that you think? And not only that, but she misses the fucking, pardon my French, the the little, what is that, like, boat that the Italian guy goes on. What
Yep.
do you call it? Like speedboat, whatever, that pulls up to the yacht. Like she couldn't figure out how to drive the speedboat. She jumps off the yacht and just completely drowns.
Yep.
The
Yeah.
hell? Just
Yeah.
like you shot everybody for nothing, lady. God.
Yeah. And it's just like she shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. If she had been a better person at any point in either of these two series, wouldn't have happened. Like she's a mess.
No, she's
She
a total mess. She
Yeah.
won an Emmy for this, I believe, right?
I think so. And she was great. Like as an actress, she
She
was
was.
fantastic. Yeah, and then yeah, it's just wild. Like at the end when like the bodies are washing up on shore and like
I was
all the
surprised it
crazy
was her,
stuff.
but then it made sense at the end because I thought like she would have swum back, but it's like no, she didn't make it. Did she hit
Yeah,
her head? Like what
yeah,
happened?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think so. And then yeah, and just the way like it all goes down. How the Michael Imperioli, like he blew it. Like he just made bad choices. But I forget, like at the end, was he on his way to making up with his wife though?
In the end, I mean, he pays
He pays
fifty
off the girl.
the girl because his son says please do it. The son actually thinks that this hooker
Is gonna
loves
fall in love.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like a sweet guy, whereas like the father and the grandfather, they were both cheaters.
Yeah.
And at one point, Mike Imperioli like blames his cheating ways on his father. Like, if you weren't like that, I wouldn't be like that. And he's like, whoa, you can't just like blame me for this. You're an adult.
Yeah.
And then he's like, and now my son's with a hooker. And it's like, well, that's your problem.
Yeah, and it's funny because like that is like this generational thing now because the son was he was more innocent. Like he was
Totally.
not going to be that guy. And now there's at least a chance that after all this, he'll end up becoming that guy too. Like, you know, it's really um you know, it's really sad. And then at the very end, the two girls aren't they setting themselves up to do this whole thing again? Like, aren't they, or were they running off with the money? Like, I can't remember.
They ran off with the money, but um, the one who was her name Lucia, or yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think
that was
so.
it. Lucia, the non-singer. What? Yeah, Lucia. She hired that guy to make it sound like he was like the pimp and to
Hmm.
like he was gonna hurt her, but we don't know that. We thought like this guy was pretty much like going to hurt her and was the main guy who was taking the money when really he was just someone random who she probably was friends with or hooking up with.
Hmm.
But yet they kept on bringing in so much money. And then the other one, Mia, hysterical how she wanted to be a singer and like how she didn't sleep with the pianist, but she wanted to. And then she ends up sending him to the hospital unintentionally because she thinks that she's giving him Viagra, but
Hmm.
she gave him some other drug that was in Lucia's purse. But meanwhile, she ends up becoming the lead singer at the White Lotus anyway, but not how she initially intended. She thought she was going to sleep her way there, but instead she drugs him and almost kills him.
Yep.
So that's kind of funny. Uh, yeah, but they both, had a very successful ending in their own way. And even like, how about the hotel manager at the White Lotus Sicily? She's gay and she has her first, I guess, lesbian experience with one of the hookers, which is
Hmm.
pretty funny. So that was interesting having like a female hotel manager versus Armand, the male hotel manager
Hmm.
at the White Lotus in Hawaii. I think I was reading the next White Lotus season is going to take place in Thailand.
Is that what it is? Yeah, I know I saw, but I don't remember where it was. But I thought somebody was going to come back too,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
but I
I
don't
really
remember.
I really enjoyed this series. Both seasons were really great in different ways, but both were great. The characters that they have going on and like mini storylines within, it was perfect. The two couples in the second season with Aubrey Plaza and
Hmm.
like I love Theo James. He's like so hot. He plays such a jerk, but he's so good.
Yeah, he was good at being the jerk in that. I
Yeah.
thought Aubrey Plaza's husband, I thought kind of sucked. Like not as an actor, like
Yeah.
the actor was great, but the husband was just kind of,
Right.
you know.
He's just I don't know. He's showing no affection to her. You don't know what to think. And then they start falling apart with like the lack of communication. Aubrey Plaza's character is super insecure and she's from the beginning doubting the relationship between Theo James's character and
Hmm.
his wife. And his wife is just, she's sort of like, I'm used to being, the rich housewife that gets cheated on and, I do my own thing. They
She,
make her seem to be stupid, but she's actually pretty smart. But I think she's just
yeah,
playing her cards the
I
way
was
she
gonna
wants
say
to.
her and the hookers were like the only people that knew what was going on in their worlds the whole time. Like, um,
Self-awareness.
yeah, the character's name is Daphne,
Right.
is Theo James' wife. She understands the situation.
Hmm.
Like you said, they kind of play her off as a little dumb or whatever. But
Yeah.
at one point, she's like, I understand this whole thing. She's like, I'm gonna do this, and this, and I'm gonna get this, and this.
Right.
That's how it is. I remember the only question there was, and that nobody, even the producers, they say they know the answer, but they won't give the answer, is did she do anything with the other husband when they went off at the end, when they walked kind of down the island
I think
together?
they did. I think they did. I think she wanted to prove a point like, oh,
Hmm.
you think he's got the power in the relationship? No, I do what I want.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what she proved when she took him away, which is funny because from my understanding, Harper, Aubrey Plaza's character, just made out with
Theo James.
Theo James. They didn't like hook up.
Hmm.
Just it was weird. It was really weird. But also Theo James had ulterior motives. He just wanted um his character, I forgot the character's name, the guy who plays the husband,
Ethan.
Ethan to just invest with him because he finally made it big. It seemed like their friendship from college wasn't like a real friendship. It was more just, Theo James was a pretty face.
Yeah, and he was kind of a dick to him from,
Yeah,
yeah, by all accounts, he was not a
nice.
good friend.
No, and not until Ethan made a lot of money and made it
Hmm.
big did he all of a sudden want to reconnect with him. And not only just reconnect with him, go away on vacation. That's a big thing. That's not something that like someone that you're not close with that you just go away on vacation with, like couples wise. It's
Yeah.
odd. It's very odd. So yeah, I think the whole thing is, yeah, definitely left to your interpretation. But yeah, I think they totally slept together, and it's more because Daphne wanted to show Ethan, I can do what I want. And Ethan's probably like, yeah, I'm gonna screw your wife because look what
Hmm.
this asshole has just put me through mentally, whether they actually hooked up or not, him and his wife. I mean, how about when they started punching each other in the water? That was hysterical.
Yeah.
Well, they make like Aubrey Plaza's character to be completely paranoid the entire show, and then all of a sudden, Ethan flips as soon as he sees them flirting at the bar, and then he goes back to the hotel room, and the latch is, I guess he saw the door latched, and then
Hmm.
also the adjoining rooms, weird, right? Between the
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
Who does adjoining rooms like friends that are couples? I think that's so odd.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of little oddities in there that make it really bizarre, and they play it up really well as far as the story goes too. Like it's just good. Lots of good twists and turns in it, and yeah, it was great. And like I said, I think the two people that were in control of everything the whole time, or at least themselves, were the hookers, especially the one, especially Lucia
Lucia,
and,
yeah,
and Daphne. I think those are the two characters that accepted where they were in life and understood, like they understand the game. They know what they're doing.
yep,
Everybody else was a little out. Like Theo James' character thinks he understands the game, but he doesn't really. He's kind of a dumbass, he's
total dumbass.
yeah, and so he doesn't have the control. Like, yeah, the two that have it were Daphne and Lucia. Um, but yeah, it's a good one for sure. I really I enjoyed the second season more than the first season. There's something about the first season for me that just felt so bleak,
Yeah,
that it was a little harder for me to like truly enjoy. But the second season, even though it was not happy either, maybe
sure.
just that little bit of happiness from the girls at the end. Um,
I
you
think
know,
there was more mystery in season 2 than season 1, to be honest with you.
mhm. And
Like,
the Italian son, the one that was getting the runaround the whole time, like at least you felt like at the end he grew up a little bit, right?
not to trust people.
Yeah, yeah, because he
How do
was
you
such a
feel
weenie.
about, yeah, he was a weenie, but he was a nice weenie.
Hmm.
How do you feel about the end of the second season when Haley Lou Richardson's character Portia sees Albie,
Hmm.
the Italian son, at the airport, and they're like, "Hey, how are you? Good. How's your girlfriend? Oh, she ripped me off. How's the guy? He was a lunatic,
Yeah.
deranged."
Yeah.
I mean, uh, the guy, I would have not wanted to talk to her again. she totally just left him for the hot Australian guy.
Yeah.
But it just shows like her motives too. She's actually sort of like Jennifer Coolidge's character. Like
Mhm.
she'll just make decisions. Like she's not loyal. She's someone who just goes with whatever I guess seems better or more convenient for her at the time. So, it just kind of shows her flaws too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an interesting ending because it kind of implies that maybe they're going to start talking again. And when you're watching it, you're like, dude, don't do that. Like you're like, just walk away. Don't get
Yeah,
involved with that girl. Uh,
but
because
she left him for a bad boy, and
yep,
oh, side note, was he so remember she's the guy that what was his name? Jack, the Australian.
Jack. Yeah,
He was screwing the quote unquote uncle. They were obviously not uncle and nephew.
yeah,
Was he just another one of his groupies or like just
I
because
think
he was
so.
friends with
Yeah,
all the gays? Was he just actually a gay guy or we don't know?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know how he fit into that, but he was definitely part of the plan and not just
Sure.
innocent in the whole thing. But yeah, it was. He was an interesting character too, because that whole scene when because she walks in on them screwing around, doesn't she? Or she sees it?
Jennifer Coolidge's character,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah,
he didn't even want to, they weren't even planning to kill Portia. They just wanted her to be, I guess, distracted and then separate Portia
mhm,
from Jennifer Coolidge's character or from Tanya.
yeah,
So yeah, it was great. I enjoy like Kevin, every moment I could not just look down from the screen. It was so captivating and everyone acted so well. Just the
yeah,
characters were great. I was intrigued. My mom, she said, she's like, I'm intrigued. I was like, how are you liking it? I'm intrigued. I'm like, that's exactly how I felt. I was like, okay, what next? Kept my interest both seasons from beginning to end.
yeah, yeah. Spectacularly acted across the board, and I think in a lot of cases you don't like a lot of the characters,
Now,
and that's totally fine. I think for me, I've always said that one of the things that I have a hard time with a show like Succession, which is supposed to be an amazing show, um, is that I can't relate to any of the characters, so I have a hard time feeling bad for anybody in the show for the stuff that they're going through. And at least in this show, uh, I can relate to a lot of the characters. Like they're going through things that feel a little more human. They don't feel so insanely rich that I shouldn't care about their problems. Like, yes, some of them do have a lot of money, but like, Tanya, she's going through in the first one, she's going through the whole thing about losing her mom and she's a mess about that. Like that feels relatable. And,
right.
like, everybody across the board, um, there's something at least somewhat relatable with all the characters. So I think it, for me, made for a really great show. And you can kind of invest in almost every character in some way, even if that investment is kind of disliked. Like with Sydney Sweeney's character, there's really nothing about her that is likable in this. Um,
No, she's just a stuck-up rich brat teenager.
yeah, but you could invest in her because you want to see something bad happen to her. Like you just like, I would like her to have a very bad day. So,
Right. No,
but yeah,
totally. Yeah, thanks for the recommendation. For I know you recommended it. Pretty sure Andrew recommended it.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
every like I have not heard anyone say, you can skip White Lotus, it's not good. Everyone I've spoken to about it has told me that they loved it, they enjoyed it. It's only positive. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, critics liked it, audience liked it, all across the board. It's something different.
Yep, and it's getting another season. So like it's not just that it's been liked, it's a big enough deal that's going to keep going. So
Right.
I think they're even talking about plans for a fourth one. So they may continue to go. It's nice because it's sort of and it's almost like an anthology series, right? That they don't have to bring anybody in from from this previous season. I think somebody
Right.
is going to carry over. I don't remember who they said it was, but I thought somebody was going to carry over from this one to the next one.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure who it is yet. But it'll be
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. No, it's
So
such a good idea. And Mike White is the guy who creates it and directs it, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, he's behind something else too. Oh, he wrote Despicable Me 4.
It's just like that.
Yeah, they're basically the same show.
It's the same show.
Let's see. He produced the original Magic Mike.
Again, the same show. Wow.
He
Okay.
was Dawson's
Um,
Creek and Freaks and Geeks.
yeah,
He's
this
been
guy has
around, but nothing actually. I thought he had been done something else, but I don't see anything on his list here that is super
sure.
similar. Maybe Enlightened
I
with
don't know anything
Laura
about that.
Dern. That one's a little crazy too. I don't think I ever finished it, but it was interesting. She's a little crazy in that one, so apparently he likes crazy people a little bit.
Yeah. Now the series is very successful and it's
Yeah.
clearly, I mean, they already have a third season in the works, fourth potentially.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the fact that they incorporate so many big names and I mean, you don't see a show like this that has so many big names and all these side stories. It's almost like a soap opera condensed into 7, 8 episodes with pretty well-known names in Hollywood all incorporated.
Yeah,
But
I don't know how he became the person that could get those people,
right.
but he's not going to have a problem with it going forward.
Oh, heck no.
Uh,
It's been so successful. I'm sure people are literally volunteering, like, can I be in it? But here's the thing too, there's no one like overly famous. Like I wouldn't say there are any, I mean, would you say any of these people are A-listers?
no,
Like we don't have Meryl Streep or like a Tom Hanks or Leo DiCaprio, Emma Stone, or any of these people in it yet, but maybe down the line, who
no.
knows?
Even in season 3, you've got Michelle Monaghan, Jason Isaacs he's a big deal, but he's not
Right.
A-list. Carrie Coon is great, but she's not like necessarily top tier. Walton Goggins, he's still like on the rise. He was in Fallout. It looks like Connie Britton will be back.
Interesting.
If this is accurate, I'm just seeing this. Scott Glenn is going to be in it. I haven't seen him in a little bit. Parker Posey, who I friggin' adore. So yeah, but again, yeah, like you said, nobody that is like top tier actors, but a lot of great actors. Like Carrie Coon is amazing. Jason Isaacs is amazing.
Right.
Parker Posey is great at doing, the kind of odd characters. There's an actress named Amy Lou Wood, which if you've watched Sex Education on Netflix,
No.
she's doofy. Okay, if you like comedy, Sex Education is absolutely amazing.
Okay.
With Gillian Anderson and oh shit, what's his name? I can't remember the actor's name. He's like 30 something. He looks 15. He's perfect for the role. But that show's fantastic. I definitely recommend that one. That one's on Netflix, so you don't have to. You probably already subscribed to Netflix, but definitely worth a watch.
Cool.
So
That's good to know. Awesome.
yeah. All right. Well, I will then really quick. House of the Dragon started this last weekend. The next episode will be tomorrow. I only watched the first episode, so I don't have a lot to say about it, but it was an interesting episode because it has to take everything from the last season, kick off this one, and go. And Game of Thrones is a show that is about almost politics and like political strategy and things like that. So when this one starts off, it starts off from the dark place that the first season left us off at, which is one of, I think it's the queen's son was killed, and so now the other girl, they're vying for power and doing whatever they can, and so This episode is very slow, very much just setting up who's angry at who and what's going on. There's not a ton of action in it. I really think it's going to be like a 3-minute review. But you know, it's all solid acting, great dialogue, all that, but it's definitely more dialogue heavy than action heavy. And so I was watching it and I was like, I'm almost a little bored. I'm not sure if I'm, excited about the season yet or not. I wasn't excited about House of the Dragon until the first season until the very end. And so I was kind of on the fence about it. And then, of course, at the end of the episode, something absolutely brutal happens. And I don't want to give it away for anybody that hasn't watched or read the books, because apparently it's straight out of the books, at least to a degree. But it's super brutal and sets the stage for what is probably going to be a really nasty, brutal season. So if you've watched Game of Thrones, the original Game of Thrones is obviously the story we're kind of all familiar with. Takes place in the world of Westeros, and it takes place over the span of a handful of years. House of the Dragon takes place, is it 100 years before? So we're looking at Daenerys Targaryen's ancestors and some of the crazy stuff that they go through. But what that allows us to have is stories with more dragons than we did before, because in the first Game of Thrones, they thought the dragons were dead. It turns out Daenerys had 3 eggs. She was able to hatch 3 dragons, and she had the dragons throughout the Game of Thrones that we all kind of know. And so this one's all about her family line in the past and kind of the political just madness that they go through and what leads them to not quite extinction, obviously, since her character's in the line, but they have a lot of issues that push their family line back in this huge political landscape for the kingdom. So the first season was good. It was a little slow and picked up near the end. I think the season actually started off pretty well as far as the reviews went. So I'm probably an outlier in that I found the first one a little boring. I guess in the first season, everything in the first season was an 8 or better. But yeah, the last few episodes were 9 and higher. So it finished stronger than it started. This first episode was an 8.4 on IMDb for the second season, which is actually, looking at all of the episodes, is the 3rd lowest rated episode in the run of the show, which is interesting. The lowest rated episode is still an 8. So people seem to tend to really like it. And it is a really well-written show. The characters are super deep. The biggest problem I think that I had with the first season, and it's going to continue into the second season, is they're not, because these people are all from a similar family, the names are all almost too similar. You've got Aegon, Aemond, Daemon. Like, I was like, who the fuck are we talking about? I was like, I really need to, like, their names to be
Do you
completely
watch
different.
but do you watch it with subtitles?
Sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't help, because in my brain, like, they say the name, even if I hear the name clearly, I can't
Right.
remember which one it is because they're so damn close. But the first season, the one thing that this season will not have, because the character dies in the first season, is Patty, what's his last name? Patty Considine. He is phenomenal in the first season. He plays King Viserys. He's the king. And his health is failing as the first season goes on, but he is so good. He is an absolute, like, scene stealer. And it's really good. Have you watched any of Game of Thrones?
No, and that's one that, because I studied history, everyone's like, you gotta watch it, you'd appreciate it. And apparently it's one of the best series ever.
It's great. It really is. I've always wondered if somebody starts watching it now and they watch it relatively quickly, like if you binge watch through it, because one of the things that everybody agrees on is that the last season, maybe even season and a half, 2 seasons, were rushed,
Right.
and they aren't as good as the rest of the show. Like, there's a lot of people that think the last season ruined the whole show. Like, there's a whole thing about it, and so people are certainly upset about that.
Hmm.
But I always wonder if somebody started it from the beginning and just binge watch the whole thing, so they were already kind of rushing the whole story. Would that last season feel as rushed? Would you feel the same way about the things that happen at the end? I
Hmm.
don't know. I've always said the last season, the events of the last season were actually fine for me, but they should have been 2 or even 3 seasons. Like that story, there's a lot of things that should have developed in there to make it actually make sense.
Hmm.
Like there's things that I expected to happen that did happen in the last season, but that last season should have been like 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and
know that
so,
Kit Harington hosted SNL like pretty much at the end of
mhm.
the series. Because how many seasons are there? There's at least like 8 to 10, right?
7, 8,
Oh,
is it?
7, 8.
Shit, no, maybe it's damn. Now I don't know. Um, let me see. Uh, just 6, I guess. Just 6.
Oh, interesting. Well, I
No,
know at
no,
the
no,
end.
8, 8. I don't know what I was saying, but there is 8 seasons. Okay, but the 8th season specifically is only 6 episodes, so it's even shorter than
Hmm.
previous seasons, and yeah, it's just really rushed.
Interesting. Yeah, I remember he hosted SNL and everyone was like, wow, like what's next? And before we knew it, he had a mental breakdown,
Yeah,
the
he
guy.
really struggled. He put a lot on his own shoulders. But like if you look at IMDb, even season 7, the lowest rated episode's an 8.5. There's episodes as high as 9.7.
Mm,
Um, that one is, yeah, I know which one that is. But season 8, no episode is over an 8, and the finale is a 4. Like
everyone
people
was so upset. Yeah,
the
I remember
people
that.
were just pissed because the real problem was too, is that HBO was going to give the creators of the show
Hmm.
more seasons. Like they wanted them to keep going, and these guys were like, "Yeah, we want to move on to other things." And so HBO said, "Well, you have to finish the show." So they rushed this last season. So it was like this comedy of choices where
Right.
either you let the guys go and you hire somebody else to take over and finish, 2, 3, 4 more seasons or whatever, and keep making the story, or you come up with something that works, and it was like they chose the worst possible option to just end it and have it go, and I did not actually realize just how poorly rated the last episode was, and
Hmm.
I totally get it. Like it's it is not the way the show should have ended. Like I said, for me, there's
Hmm.
a lot of events in the last season that I expected to have happen at some point, but not so quickly. Like there was definitely things with Daenerys that for me were exactly what her character was going to do, but they didn't develop them. They're like, shit, well, this we got to have this happen, and you're like, why? It was completely out of
Right.
character for her having it happen where it did, and so it was
Hmm.
messy for sure.
Yeah. Has Kit Harington done anything since?
Yes, he's doing a lot more now. He's back. He's in the Marvel universe, sort of, but his character is kind of in flux, so no one's quite sure what's
Hmm.
next for him. But let me see if I why does he have more than one page? Of course he does. Should have just picked him off Game of Thrones. How many Kit Harringtons are there? No, this is stupid. Why did I not find the real?
I know it was a big hit though
Oh, is it
among
huge?
this.
And like across the board, other than that last season, I mean, I'm sure there aren't episodes that are rated um below 8 very often at all. But
Right.
right now, let's see. Kit Harrington has 4 things in development. I haven't heard of any of them. I don't know how many of these are British though.
Right.
There's one coming out later this year called The Beast Within. Um, see, he was in the Eternals for a couple of minutes. But even though I don't recognize these things, like Game of Thrones ended in 2019.
Mhm.
Uh, he has been working. He did one thing in 2021, two things in 2021, two in 2022, and then in 2023, looks like he did a TV series and two movies. And then he's got four things in development right now. So it's like he's starting to build back up, but kind of taking his time doing it. And
Mhm.
I think that's right for him. Like you said, he put way too much of Game of Thrones on his own shoulders. Um, and it was hard
Right.
because his character was well liked throughout the series. Like he was a kind of almost like the lovable loser, like he was the bastard
Mhm.
son of the main character, so he was never supposed to be
Sure.
um like the rich and powerful lead. So he goes through a bunch of stuff in that regard. Um and he's a very easy character to kind of fall in love with and kind of grab onto. And I think, like I said, he just carried so much of it on his own shoulders that he had a real hard time with it.
Right. Mm.
So, but yeah, House of the Dragon's good. If you haven't watched Game of Thrones, I definitely say give it a go. Definitely, it is a fantasy show, so there's a little bit of magic. It's HBO, so there's a whole lot of sex and violence. But it is a really good show. Like it definitely, without question, is a really good show.
Mhm.
Just be prepared if you watch that last season to be like, oh, that was disappointing. You know, but otherwise,
Yeah.
it's really great. All right, and then okay, so since we're into relevant stuff, you just saw the Bike Riders.
Yeah. I watched it last night, went to the theaters with a girl in my neighborhood, and I saw a few previews for it. I know Austin Butler's in a bunch of, or has been in a bunch of stuff within the past few years. Uh, Dune, the second Dune movie. He was in Elvis within the past
Mhm.
2, 3 years. Yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect. It's about this gang of bike riders out in the Midwest who form a real family among themselves. The the lead and head of the gang is played by Tom Hardy. You've got Austin Butler, who plays the main character, Benny, who's one of the younger members of the gang. He's very sharp and you could just tell he's a tough guy. And he catches the attention of Jodie Comer's character, Kathy, who goes into the biker bar one day and he comes up to her and they immediately lock eyes. And before she knows it, she is engaged to him. And then Mike Feist's character, Danny, he's a photographer and he documents this gang since they are the original, I guess, motorcycle gang at least in the Midwest, if not in America, in the 1950s, 1960s. And his character, Danny, kind of just showcases how over the years were just initially a bunch of guys that were racing motorcycles, and then they built like a whole culture and group out of this love and passion for riding motorcycles. They get all their wives involved and they go to parties and campouts and how in many respects this initially starts as a hobby.
I'm thinking of starting a riding club.
All those clubs do is sit around talking about motorcycles.
That's what we do.
But then it grows into more like I said, a gang. It's in many respects even like almost like its own mob. And they start building other chapters. The name of their gang is, well, they're based out of, I guess, the greater Chicago area, but they're called the Vandals. And so many people want to be a Vandal or join the Vandals. At one point, there's one of the members, and it gets pretty big. They get like 30, 40, 50. I mean, hundreds of people want to join this over time, but one of the original, I guess, members wants to challenge Johnny, Tom Hardy's character, and he comes up with an idea and he's like, why don't someone wants to be a part of this and start their own chapter in Milwaukee because they love what we're doing out here and they want to make their own vandals. And Tom Hardy's like, all right, well, if you want to challenge me, we'll go in, the middle of a lot somewhere and go, fist to fist or knife to knife, you choose. And they're like fists. And Tom Hardy beats the crap out of like a guy who's so much bigger than him just by like breaking his finger, where he taps out and is like, no, I'm done. Benny, who's played by Austin Butler, it shows how brave he is. They're, I guess, not rules, but they do have their own rules in the actual mob itself. But Austin Butler's character is so proud of being a vandal. He goes out in his leather jacket to a bar in the beginning, and they go through this scene, more than once, where these gentlemen who are not bikers go up to him and they tell him, you take off your jacket, knowing like that the vandals, don't necessarily have the best reputation in town. And he's like, I don't take off. They call him colors. He's like, I don't take off my colors. So they beat the crap out of him and they almost take his foot off.
I told you to take that jacket off.
You'd have to kill me to get this jacket off.
With the shovel, and he ends up in the hospital and he's being comforted by his wife Kathy, and to the point where she's like, you should really quit this because like you almost lost your foot. And he is so committed to this gang, and I mean he treats them like they're all brothers and dear friends, and it's so much of a culture which once started as a hobby, and it grows to the point where there are chapters then in California and all across the country. So you get to see, and in many respects, a lot of these guys are sort of like misfits that didn't belong anywhere else. Like they didn't want to go into like the white collar jobs or go to college. And some of them are blue collar workers that, form this bond with other blue collar workers, or even those that don't have like a full-time job. And this is where they feel like they found themselves and where they belong. So it's an interesting story. Did I like the movie? Probably it wasn't one of my favorites, if I'm being honest with you. I thought it was a bit, I don't know. I guess it just didn't really catch my interest. It's about like a gang that's sort of formed from like the 50s to 60s. I guess it's a good story. It's like, I don't think like the actual characters are real, but it's based on a book.
Okay.
So loosely based on at least this group, and just more or less Michael Feist's character, he's one of the guys and challengers. He's documenting all of this and telling the story years later of how these guys got to be like a big gang over the years. So the original book is by Danny Lyon, first published in 1968 and now in print for the first time. The Bikeriders explores the first-hand stories and personalities of the Chicago Outlaws Motorcycle Club. Yeah, and these guys like did some not so great things. I mean, they went from, just from drinking, they start bringing in, they call them like younger members who are Vietnam veterans that were really into hard drugs. That's the other thing too that they show. There are some scenes where some of the newer, younger members tried to take out and kill some of the founding members. And it's definitely, you see these rivalries, and Kathy, the wife who's played by Jodie, is it Comer? Jodie Comer. She's just keeps on telling her husband, Benny, like, I think it's time to go. Let's leave this area. Let's just go and start anew, because it's getting to the point where it's dangerous, not only for him, but also at one point she's almost raped by two newer members when, her husband and some of the founding, I'm going to call them founding members of the bikers motorcycle gang are not in sight. So it gets very dangerous and they get into some very illegal and bad activity where more than one person's at risk. And they eventually decide to move across the country and leave the biker world. But it gets to, you know, some very tough points in the movie where people get hurt and some even die. So it explores that narrative. I think there's definitely a group of people who would enjoy the story more than I would. It gave me a little bit of like The Outsiders, like reminded me a little bit of The Outsiders, but those that rode motorcycles, I suppose. Just it talks about gangs forming and how I guess men during this time felt that this type of activity was what brought them together and brought like-minded individuals to create bonds that they are able to, you know, form trusting relationships with. So in that respect, the acting was good. Wasn't particularly like a very long movie, but yeah, if you're into motorcycles or just the origins of like biker gangs, definitely give it a watch.
Yeah, it sounds like, and from while you were talking, I was looking a little bit just to see. It sounds a lot like Sons of Anarchy.
Okay.
Um, and the guy that created Sons of Anarchy, Kurt Fuller, was in a motorcycle, you know, in that lifestyle. So a lot of his stuff maybe wasn't autobiographical necessarily, but it was close. So like he
Sure.
had an understanding of the biker gang and all that. And so it's interesting that these seem to parallel each other in a lot of ways, although um, Sons of Anarchy is effectively modern, like takes place pretty much now,
Right.
where this took place in the 60s. And so like one article I was looking at, it's almost like um, the Bikeriders is, it's not a prequel to Sons of Anarchy, but it kind of plays like it is because it's all the same thing. It's all the creation of this gang, which then is still in existence in Sons of Anarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's a family, but it's a messed up family. Like they got a lot of problems, but they also have rules, and those rules get passed down to different chapters and clubs and things like that. So it definitely it sounds really really
Mm-hmm.
similar. I know, you know, in Sons of Anarchy, you had Ron Perlman's character was the original, was the first leader of the bicycle gang that we see. He's not one of the he's not the first ever, but for us watching the show, he's the first one. His wife is played by Peggy
Mm-hmm.
Bundy.
Katie Seagal.
There you go. Katie Seagal, who's married to Kurt Fuller, who created the series. But
Oh.
like, so they have that husband and wife relationship in the motorcycle gang where
Mm-hmm.
she's part of it, but she's not necessarily a member. Like women aren't really members of these things. They're kind
Yeah.
of, you know, they're living on the outside of it. And then Sons of Anarchy is really about Charlie Hunnam's character
Mm-hmm.
who finds like his dad's manifesto, who wants to take, you know, at least from what he's reading, when he starts reading his dad's manifesto, take
Mm-hmm.
the motorcycle club. It's not a gang, it's a motorcycle club. Take them from kind of this gang situation that they're in and all these illegal activities they're doing to become something a little more um familial and positive, like to be out on the road and doing these things. And that's where the show kind of starts. And he's got a girlfriend that sounds kind of similar to Jodie Comer's character. So it's really interesting. They're definitely not the same story, but they just the fact that they're so similar, but also generations apart, kind of makes you think that this is just the way these things are in these motorcycle gangs. I mean, there's so many of them out there. You got the Hells
Mm-hmm.
Angels, which are known to be, um, you know, not great. The Hells Angels, there's a lot of bad stories about the Hells Angels, but there's also some really impressive stories about the Hells Angels. Like every now and then they do something that's really great. There was one about
Mm-hmm.
there's a community where is it disabled kids, or there's something where like they will get together and they will, if they feel like somebody is being threatened or put down, they will like literally take the local Hell's Angels gang and like escort somebody to school or to a place to kind of just show support.
Sure.
So I mean, there's a lot of bad involved in these because of how long they've been there and the things that they've gone through. And it sounds like in the Bikeriders, they have a lot of the same crime issues that they have in Sons of Anarchy, running drugs, doing things to fund the club basically and keep it alive and add members. But
Yeah.
there's also, like I said, that familial aspect of it where they're trying to care for each other in the best way they know how. In a lot of cases, these guys are broken, so it's not perfect, but they're doing their best, and
Yeah.
um it's an interesting story for sure.
After Benny, Austin Butler's character, gets beaten up and almost his foot is almost severed from his body, he's in the hospital, and Johnny, who's played by Tom Hardy's like, where's that bar? I want to see like where that happened. And then they all show up to the bar. I guess it's like another part of Illinois or somewhere else in the Midwest where Austin Butler was. And he talks to the owner of the bar and he's like, give me the names of the guys who were responsible. And he writes them down on a napkin. And he's like, okay. And so this guy thinks the bar owner, like, okay, like everything's gonna be fine. Like he just gave the names of the guys that beat up Austin Butler's character, so he thinks he's like not touchable anymore. And as soon as he gets outside, one of the other bikers says to Johnny, and how about the bar? He's like, burn it down.
I don't want any trouble here.
Then I'll let you lead. What about the bar? Burn it down.
We gotta go.
Nah, we don't. They're scared of us.
And I guess he sends a couple of bikers to the homes of the two guys that beat up Austin Butler and has them beaten up too. And then the police officers, like the police and firefighters, show up and they're like, should we go? He's like, no, they're not going to do anything to us. They know how bad we are. I think they're like afraid of us.
Yeah.
Like we're just gonna, and they just sit there and watch it burn down with the cops and the firefighters there. And it just shows how powerful they became to the point where they're like, we're not gonna run from the cops. They're just gonna watch us watch what we just did to this bar.
Yeah, it's the same thing in Sons of Anarchy.
It's wild.
What was crazy about Sons of Anarchy is watching it and living in California, because Sons of Anarchy took place in Lodi and Modesto and all these places where Andrew and I lived near. Like when I lived in Tracy, the next town over was Modesto. Like we were there. Like they showed shots of them driving through the Altamont Pass, which is basically where I lived. And so like to have it all be, that much more real. But I mean, this story, it's the same. So it's really like Sons of Anarchy is several seasons long.
Sure.
And several episodes a season, whereas this is, an hour and a half, 2 hour movie. But the story's the same. Like all that stuff, as those bones and all are still there. So I'm actually kind of curious about this one. I've seen all the buzz about it. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's got an 84 or 82% from the critics and 74% from the audience. So it's doing really well, at least critically. I don't know if it's making any kind of money. I don't know that much makes money right now. Apparently Inside Out 2 crushed it at the box office.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I don't know that it's going to do great at the box office, but I think it'll get its buzz for the actors and all that.
I mean, go see it if you're into those type of movies. I'll be honest with you, it was not my first choice, but I'm always open to watching new things. And I like Tom Hardy. I liked him in Venom, and I mean, I liked Austin Butler in Elvis. So I was like, why the heck not? I mean, there's some good actors here.
Yeah, I'm really curious about it. I might, when it comes to streaming, I'll probably watch it just to, if nothing else, see the differences between it and
the two
Sons of Anarchy, because I don't think there will be a lot, to be honest. I think it'll be pretty similar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad comparison. I think Sons of Anarchy was actually a great show. So um it'll be interesting to see the two kind of side by side.
Cool.
So all right. So as we head towards the end of the episode, I will take us on a little journey here. There's a movie behind me called Trigger Warning, and I remember seeing something about it, that it was like the next hyped up movie dropping on Netflix. And then I saw that it was Jessica Alba, who I hadn't seen in a long time, and it, I didn't know a lot about it. I knew it was an action movie. Um, it's supposed to be kind of her return to form, and people were saying, "Oh, her training from um, Dark Angel way back in the day kind of prepared her for this role." And I didn't know anything about it, so I put it on. I was excited for it. It is a colossal dumpster fire of a film. Uh, I try to not negatively review a lot of things like too much, Um, but like if anybody watching this has historically watched this show, when Andy, not Andrew, but when Andy was on, he and I often disagree about movies. He's got a lower bar than I do. I'm a little snottier about movies that I do and don't like. But in our text chain, and I may copy and paste some of the conversation between Andy and I into this episode. The two of us just thoroughly thrashed this movie and agreed. I mean, there's just nothing about it that makes any kind of sense. It's a terrible, terrible movie. It starts off where Jessica Alba's character is in some nondescript Middle Eastern desert. There's a car chase going on between Middle Eastern bad guys X, right? Like whatever, pick your Middle Eastern nationality, they're just the bad guys, right? They're driving. Uh, Jessica Alba's team is chasing them. A sniper on the ridge manages to hit the driver of the bad guy's car on the move, doesn't shoot anybody else, just the one guy. Car crashes. Jessica Alba's there. She fights the guys, beats the crap out of him because she's a badass. And there's a little bit of weird stuff that happens there, and then she gets a phone call that her dad um just died, and so she goes back home to deal with that. She is some kind of special forces. I don't know that they even say. She goes back home and basically uncovers this weird conspiracy in the town that she's from, where her dad died. And it turns out there's some guys in town that are selling guns and weapons, and it just gets worse and worse and worse as it goes. It's just like, I really wanted to like this because there's three writers on it, and then that actually feels like one of the problems. It almost feels like the three writers wrote their stuff separately and they just stuck it together, and things don't make sense. So much of the dialogue is just corny as hell. But one of the writers is Hallie Gross, who worked on the Last of Us games and the Last of Us series, and everything that I've ever experienced from her is really great. And so when I first saw her name attached to the opening credits, I was excited, and then I watched it and I was no longer excited. But it's just everything about it's bad. Like the action works for the most part in places. I think maybe some of the problems with the direction comes out of the director. This is her first American film. She is Indonesian. Sorry. She made a movie prior to this in 2017 called Marlena the Murderer in Four Acts. I've never heard of it, but it's a certified 98% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics and 80% from the audience. So she's got this, she's only done one thing that anybody's seen, but it's great. Hallie Gross is a great writer. Jessica Alba has been in stuff. She's, decent. I've never actually thought she was a great actress, but she's been in some stuff that was okay. So there was a lot of potential for this movie. Um, but man, like when I say it's bad, like I can't tell you a moment in it besides Jessica Alba being pretty that is good. Like it's just the guys that are selling weapons are just shooting rocket launchers into the hill, blowing stuff up to show them off. And literally, like, there's a scene where Jessica Alba's sitting on top of a canyon ridge. She's watching them do something bad, and she looks to the right, and there's a huge military base right there that apparently doesn't care that people are blowing up explosives a half a mile to the left. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Um, and it's just like everything that can possibly be bad about it just is. There's no great character development. There's no reason for her to be there. I mean, her dad died, whatever, but um, like at no point does this woman who is part of special forces until the end when she really needs help, does she ever just call the military and say these guys are selling guns? Like that's what you would do. Even if it's your hometown, you'd be like, hey, friends in the military, I am special forces. These guys are doing things that we wouldn't want people doing in the Middle East. We should stop them here. None of that. So she goes on her own, gung ho. Her dad taught her to like knives. So in half the scenes where she should be just shooting people, because she's trying to save the day, she doesn't. She just uses a knife because that's like her signature style. I don't know. It's just it is terrible. I could literally I can't even recommend it for people wanting to look for a bad movie. It's just that bad. And I enjoy some bad movies, like I really do. This one, the Rotten Tomatoes score actually went up since it released. There's only 21 critic reviews, but it's at 24% from the critics and 17% from the audience. Like
That's pitiful.
it is terrible. It is terrible. It is a
Yeah.
bad it is just a bad movie. I
And
haven't
it's a
seen a movie.
Netflix movie only, never came out anywhere else.
Yeah, I think at some point they were going to try and push it to theaters, I think. It
Mm-hmm.
was in development for like 10 years, and then in 2022 it was, I guess, pretty close to release, if not close to done, and then they had to rework it. Um
Yeah.
and and I don't know what the reasoning was there, but uh, it is
It
just
seems like it's like a wannabe, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, but like not in, I mean, in different location and clearly not very good.
yeah, like there is nothing redeeming about it. Like I wish there was, and I wish I could point to something about it being good, and there's just not. Like some of the actors in it I recognize, and I
Mhm.
even like I said, like I don't think Jessica Alba is the best actress. I never really have. She's very pretty, and um she's a great humanitarian. Like she does a bunch of stuff outside, and she's been a
Mhm.
mom the last few years. She's out doing great stuff. Um, but in this, like, she's just not good. Anthony Michael Hall has a small part in it. Um,
Mhm.
he plays his part fine, but his part is stupid. He's like the guy running for local office or some kind of government.
Mhm.
Um, but of course, he's also the one behind everything that's going on. Like it's his family. Um, Mark Webber is an actor that I've seen. Like these are all kind of actors that I've seen before, but I couldn't tell you what they were in. So Mark Webber
Right.
I've seen before. Gabriel Basso I've seen before. Um, I thought somebody else popped up that I kind of recognized, but like, yeah, it's
Did
just a
she
movie.
produce it at all? Like, I'm curious, like, for someone who doesn't need to act anymore and hasn't really been in, let's say, the Hollywood world behind the camera or in front of the camera for a while, has she had any involvement? Because I just feel like, why now? And what possessed her to think, hey, I want to be in an action-packed
Yeah,
film and be the protagonist after all this time where I've been, making very
Yeah, I don't know what led her to
Yeah,
come back to this. Like
yeah.
I,
She
I
crushes
don't
it
know.
as a businesswoman, I'll tell you that much. Like Honest
Yeah,
Company is
yeah,
so successful. I use their products.
yeah. Like she's out there doing great things and doing all that. I don't
Hmm.
know. I don't know why this would be the thing she would come back with.
Yeah,
Other than maybe she just missed doing action. Like, she did looks like
honey.
something animated in 2023. Um, there was a show called LA's Finest that she did in 2020. So I mean, she's been around 2019 to 2020. She's done things here and there, but this is like the biggest production she's been involved in. And I mean, like, yeah, the even the IMDb score is a 4.6. Like it's bad.
It's bad. It sounds
And
like across the board on so many different
yeah,
sources. And for like, it's bad if both the audience and the critics have it under like a 40%. Like
yeah.
that's pretty bad.
Yeah, and it's not one of those things where it's getting review bombed for some reason. There's just not a ton of reviews. There's only like a
Yeah.
couple hundred audience reviews. I don't think it's big enough for people to target. It's a
Does
nonsense
Netflix take
film.
it? Does Netflix have to keep it up because it's a Netflix film now?
I think Netflix will keep it up anyways. I think sometimes the negative review brings more views. I think it was,
Interesting.
even though it wasn't good, I think it was one of their top streamed films, of the weekend.
Probably because it's
So
brand new and people just want to watch brand new content,
exactly, and they
right?
pump it, right? They put it up there, and they're like, when you sign into Netflix,
Sure.
it shows up at the top of the page. It's got Jessica Alba's
Right.
face on it, so people are like, I know her. Here's
Sure.
and
Also,
like,
like through the emails, like if you have a Netflix account, it will tell you what's coming next
mhm.
or what's coming soon, or starting this weekend, and they'll try to pump up, like you said, some newer content of theirs, whether it's performing well or not.
Yeah, yeah, it was bad. And like I said, for anybody that's ever watched some of the older episodes of this show, when Andy was on, we like I said, we don't agree often, but we agreed hard on this one. It's just bad. It was like it's almost like an 80s B action movie that somehow got made with a modern budget and a few like actual actors, and just nobody in the entire process of the thing really cared.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. I don't know what happened here, why this movie got made, why Jessica Alba did it. I don't know. I'm baffled. I can't recommend it. Like, there's a lot of movies, even the one that I talked about 2 weeks ago, I think, Under Paris, which is a shark movie, which is
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous. And is stupid in a lot of ways. Like, that one's kind of fun. Like, you can go watch that one. It's a shark movie, and it's, you know, entertaining at least. I mean, this movie's not even entertaining. It's just dumb.
Yeah.
So yeah, trigger warning. Definitely go watch it.
It's triggering, but not for the right reasons.
It certainly triggered something in me. Um, Maybe a gag reflex or something. I don't know. But
Bummer.
so yeah. So you, I guess, can finish it up strong. I hope you saw another Cirque du Soleil show.
Yeah, I went to the Prudential Center in Newark for its last performance. It will be going to Elmont next, I believe, within the next few weekends. Oh no, not until August. So in August, the show OVO, which means insects, or no, I'm sorry, it means egg. Excuse me, egg in Portuguese. It's a show about and that revolves around insects, and I really enjoyed it. It was good. I went with three other ladies in my neighborhood. We took the train over from New York City to the land of New Jersey, and we saw OVO, which, very similar acts to, if for those of you who have seen Cirque du Soleil, a lot of trampoline action. We saw a contortionist, really great acrobatic and just talent across the board. They had two or three performers that were more of the comedic relief for the show, where they're doing funny things, but everyone's dressed in like an insect outfit, everything from a ladybug to a dragonfly to crickets. And the stage is set up in such a way where you feel like you're in their world. I got, flashbacks to like a bug's life, or ants a bit, just with, how they had things set up. But overall, very, very good if you're into Cirque du Soleil's and if you want to bring kids, or not even, you don't even need to bring kids, but it's just entertaining for, a wide variety of people, ages, etc. And it was pretty short. It was like maybe just over 2 hours, and there's a 25-minute intermission between the first act and the second act. So, have you seen any Cirque du Soleil's, Kevin, or no?
I have, but it's been a long, long time. Like I don't remember any. Like in particular, I think when I saw one, it was in the like early days of Cirque du Soleil. Like there was a time when it was like just Cirque du Soleil, and they did
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and then over time they started developing these other shows that were kind of in the Cirque du Soleil universe almost,
Right.
Um, and so like I know I've seen one a million years ago, but I haven't seen one any kind of recently. I was looking at screenshots of this one. It looks very vibrant. Like the colors look really bright and
Very vibrant.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they all have different themes, though. Some of them will do like similar type of acts, you'll notice. I think one of the most unique things about this show, other than like the costumes and just the fact that it's an insect theme, there was one bit in particular that I thought was pretty amazing to see on stage, where they had the cocoon, and it was a woman wrapped up in, I mean, she's, I guess, a, an acrobat who specializes in silks. So you probably seen anyone who's seen a Cirque du Soleil before, or just other shows, you'll have someone who is very good with silks and being able to swing on the silks, but she's wrapped up in the silk and like a cocoon, and it just shows her the transformation of, I mean, they didn't show the caterpillar at that point, but they showed her suspended in the air, unwraps like the cocoon, and then transforms into a butterfly in such a way that I thought was incredibly captivating, no matter what angle you were sitting in that venue. And it pretty much, they had it set up in like a circular format, as it often is, but just so beautiful in how they incorporated colors and just her movements in general to showcase and portray that transformation into a butterfly. I thought that was fantastic. They also had other creatures that were jumping off I don't know if you can see the images, but there's two trampolines, and there were at least like 6 to maybe 10 at the end. It was like the ending act of OVO, where they had these green, okay, they call them crazy crickets. So they had like green crickets jumping from these trampolines and scaling this wall. And it made you feel like, wow, this is definitely like, to some degree, a representation of just how crickets will jump in such a way. And they're like flipping off of they have like a rock climbing wall, which I guess represents the land, and how they're able to like jump from the top of this rock climbing wall down to the ground where they have these trampolines, and then flip in the air and then just stick onto the rock wall and then go back onto the trampolines in a certain cadence, where they have like 2 or 3 crickets or performers jumping back and forth between the trampolines. They also did trapeze in the air to have some sort of, and I don't know which insect species was doing that, but that was pretty cool. They had a flexible dragonfly. They had the same type of act in Mystere, which I saw a couple weeks ago in Vegas, with the poles, where they have different people that are swinging from different, like 2 or 3 different poles. They have the same thing there, but instead this time they were ants. It was very cool. And they even had like this one scene I don't even know what the guy insect was, but the female insect was a ladybug. And they had two audience, like they brought two people from the audience up to like make the other bug jealous. So the male insect brought a female on, and the ladybug brought this one guy on, and it was very funny how they incorporated and had the audience come up as well as just got the audience as a whole involved and cheered for the respective audience member that was brought on stage. So I think it's a good night out for anyone that likes something for the entire family, or if you want to bring your partner for a fun evening out, it's something different.
Yeah, it looks, I mean, it looks like it would be, just visually speaking, a whole lot of fun.
Totally. And the nice thing about Cirque du Soleil, you could always just go on their site and see if there's, if you live near a big city. I know they were in Connecticut, I think, within the past couple of months, Kevin. You could always just
Yeah, I
check to
bet they were in
see.
Hartford. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. They travel. A lot of them are touring shows. Very few of them are resident, with the exception of, Vegas and I think like parts of Mexico. They have like one or two resorts where they have like a resident show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there's a city somewhere near you in the US, definitely try to catch a show for sure. It's a good evening out and a good way for you to spend time with loved ones, family, friends, etc.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like it does. It looks like a lot of fun. Sometimes like I see some of them and I'm like, that looks too serious. This one looks like it's a lot of
No,
fun.
I think it's the most, honestly, I think it's the most kid-friendly one that I've seen. Like Mystere that I saw, that was more trippy, honestly, with between like the grown baby and like it was weird. It was very weird. And then the one I saw last year was called Corteo. That one's it's dark, but it's also like it's about the death of a clown and him kind of trying to remember his life. So yeah, there are some that have like more darker themes, but this one's just like very fun and vibrant, as you said. I think it's not one of the more serious themed Cirque du Soleils, and even just the music's very upbeat as well too.
Yeah. Yeah, is it funny that you say that? Because I mean, just looking at the pictures, like it feels like, yeah, the music would be more upbeat, that it's just more like very energetic and fun. And yeah, I'll put up for the episode in here, I'll put in as many pictures as I can and stuff, because I think you can really tell, like just like I said, just by looking at these still pictures, you can tell that it's a fun show.
It's a really fun show. And when you first get to the venue, there's just a big egg that's I felt like Jurassic Park, like with like the egg, but it's just on stage and we were all like, oh, that thing's so heavy. And it looks like it's heavy. And within the first 2 minutes, I don't know how they do it, but we find out like you can tell it's like it's hollow inside and they almost like deflate it and take it off stage. The way that Cirque du Soleil is able to transition between acts is phenomenal. They have you look in one place and before you know it, this character or this item that they put on stage is gone and disappears. They
Yeah,
really know their craft.
I've always talked about that. It's one of the most amazing things to me in theater in general is the special effects that they can do in theater. That they're right in front of you and they can make people just disappear. They can like stage. So like Phantom of the Opera always had some great ones. Wicked has some great ones. Like there's just, when you go to a show, the special effects are amazing. Jekyll and Hyde, the guy that played Henry Jekyll and Edward Hyde was the same actor. And there was a scene in the finale where he does a duet with himself. And so what they do is they literally take his makeup and cut him down the middle, and he's got long hair. So on the one half of his head, the hair's all loose and flowing, and the other half he's clean and kempt. And so he'll turn from side to side to do this dialogue. It's absolutely wild. And Jekyll and Hyde is one of my favorite musicals. I think it's awesome. And the guy that did it in the Broadway album, his name is Robert Cuccioli, and he's unbelievable. But I saw Jekyll and Hyde in San Francisco a long time ago, and it's it's an impressive like kind of final act when this one actor has to play these two characters, and he transitions from, you know, Hyde to Jekyll more than once, and it's really fun to see. But yeah, theater special effects always impress me because they're doing it right in front of you, and you still like you're like I don't know how they did it. So it's almost like
Yeah.
magic. You know?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we were just amazed because here we are. We're looking at one point on the stage. We're like, where did the egg go? And the egg just keeps on disappearing. We're like, where's this damn egg? And then at the end of the show, it finally cracks and then lights go out, which was so smart because you don't know like what's coming out of that egg.
That's fun. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
It's definitely it was a fun theme. I mean, like they all have fun themes, but this was definitely like a very cheery, bright, vibrant show. I think perfect for all ages. There's no like death or darkness involved, whereas in some other ones, you definitely get like a dark or like Mystere. I don't know if I take a child to Mystere to be honest with you, because it's weird, it's trippy, it's like I don't know, not something that I think is probably the most appropriate for a kid, where you see like baby heads like on the back of the head. It's kind of it could be scary, I feel like
yeah.
for certain kids, whereas this wasn't scary. This was very light and fun. You feel like you're in like I feel like I just ripped off some turf from the ground, maybe not turf, but like just cut open some grass in the suburbs, and I'm like, what's under here? And it's like this whole world of bugs. And that's pretty much how I felt in the theater.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
All right, cool. Yeah, so at least we ended on something positive. Go see
Yes.
OVO. It sounds like a lot of fun. Definitely better than Trigger Warning.
Yeah, don't do that.
So, all right, cool. Well, I think next week you said you'll be out, but Andrew will be back. I'll be here unless I'm dead, so we'll have something. And yeah, so with that, I will say thank you to everybody for watching or listening. Have a great week, and you'll see some combination of us next week.